You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
What a beautiful day for horses in the morning.
You are listening to the #1 horse podcast in the world. Here's your entertaining look at the horse world and the people in it.
Well, good Tuesday morning, everybody. I am Glenn the Geek from Ocala, Florida.
And I'm Karen Chatton from Gardnerville, Nevada. And you are listening to Horses in the Morning on the Horse Radio Network for August 13th, episode 3496. Good morning, Horse World.
When your start time's on Saturday and your finish time's on Sunday, and it doesn't get much better than best conditioned, and completing the challenge is the challenge, you're an endurance rider.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, August is the show after Tevis, and we're going to be talking all about Tevis today. What do we have going on, Karen?
Yes, exactly. We have Jeanette Jay Mero, who's a veterinarian as well as a rider, and her daughter, Reyna Mero, that as a mother-daughter duo finished first and second in the Tevis Cup this year in blazing hot conditions. And Reyna also received the Haggin Cup. So we're going to talk to them about the Tevis, and we're also going to talk with Dr. J about a couple of things that didn't go so great at Tevis this year that were a little bit of a tragic situation that occurred. We're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about Trot Transitions and how to preserve your horse's energy while maintaining a good pace through an endurance ride.
I got a lot going on. And, you know, there's a very long endurance ride going on right now over in Mongolia that I've been reporting on every day here on Horses in the Morning. And today is day 6 of the Mongol Derby. So imagine that, Karen, just 6 solid days in the saddle, riding crazy ponies. And there's really no change in the lineup in the top 3. It's been this way for the last couple of days. Missy Morgan, who's out of South Africa, continues her romp through the Derby course. She is now at horse station 22, and that means she has 7 more to go, I believe. And she's still a horse station ahead of Sam Jones and Josh Edwards. Josh is the cowboy out of Texas, the bronc rider. And so Sam Jones and Josh Edwards are still trailing. They've been trailing for the last day or two, but they've rejoined forces. They're riding together, and they have closed the gap slightly. They've gained about a half a horse station, and a horse station is 25 to 30 kilometers. That's when they change horses at the horse stations. It's kind of how the Mongol Derby does it. It's kind of like vet checks, and they do vet checks at the horse stations. Their horses still have to, it's just like endurance rides. Their horses have to come down in a certain amount of time, and they get penalized. You know, they still look after the horses, and you have to consider too, Karen, imagine riding these crazy little ponies and not knowing who you're going to get, and you're changing a couple of times a day.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I guess being a bronc rider would really come in handy.
I think it does help him. So, yeah, but he's kind of, looks like in the pictures, he's taller, and these are ponies. These are, 13 and a half at the high end, 14 and a half hand ponies. So, it does look like he's roller skating sometimes. Some of these riders that are taller, it looks that way, but these are tough ponies. There's no problem. And it's very hot there too. So the last 2 days have been really hot conditions to the point where they have a certain hours that they're allowed to ride in. So you can't push too hard. And if you get to a point where you're not at a horse station and it's quitting time that day, if it's 5 o'clock rolls around and it's time to quit, you have to quit, and you have to camp out in the middle of nowhere. You just stop with your horse. You hope your horse doesn't run away in the night, and you're camping on the ground. Or if you find some locals and get them to take you into their yurt, then you can stay with them.
Here.
Yeah, so that's what happens a lot, actually. And they're very hospitable there, although I imagine communication be an issue. But so it's important that when you time it just right in your rides that you're coming into a horse station toward the end of the day. Well, they've decided because it's so hot that they're going to extend the hours earlier in the morning and later at night so people can ride in the cooler parts of the day and then take a break in the heat of the day. The problem that they have there, as we discussed yesterday with Jamie, is if you see the pictures from Mongolia, the one thing you do not see is a tree anywhere. I mean, there are no trees. So when you're out in the hot, no shade, correct. It's kind of hard to find shade.
So it all comes down to strategy.
Yeah, it really does.
Basically.
And that all goes out the window when your horse tosses you 3 times before you even get out of the,
I saw the one poor guy where the horse tossed him off and took off with all his gear.
Yep.
And
That's happened to many riders over the years. And then they have to try and find the horse or the gear, But there's been a lot of that. The one poor girl got tossed 2 or 3 times before she ever got out of the one horse station. So, yeah. So, and then you get lucky like this leader, Missy, who ended up yesterday, she got 2 unbelievable horses that apparently had won races in Mongolia. She just got lucky and she flew through there. She rode the 30 kilometers in an hour and 45 minutes because the horse just wouldn't stop. So just a whole different world. There's no time to develop a bond with your horse. It's like, because you're on to the next one.
I'll just stick with my Arabs.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're safe and sane.
Yeah. There's no 10,000 miles on the same horse like you did. None of that.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh.
So they're going. There should be, I think, 1.5 more days, and we'll have a winner. She'll be coming into the end.
Okay, good.
But a lot can happen. When we followed this and did daily shows on it, you get one bad horse and you're ruined. I mean, Missy's out in the lead, gets one bad horse, and all of a sudden she's done. They're passing her, and it's all it takes. So,
wow,
a lot going on over there, and I know a lot of people are following that. So I wanted to give that update. So what have you been up to in the last month? Have you gone on any rides, or has it been too hot and smoky?
It's been really hot. Yeah, we've had more days of triple-digit heat than I think I ever remember here. But I still am fitting in rides early in the morning often. And I do want to give an update on my friend, the one that had the horse that went off the mountain and got all cut up back in June. That horse has made an absolutely amazing recovery. In fact, they completed the Tahoe Rim 50, which is an extremely technical and difficult and hard ride. A week or two ago, they completed that. So he's recovered amazingly well, which is just, I'm so excited for them. We're going to
tough would
ride
it
together.
Be for the rider and the horse to get back on and do that again?
Especially on technical, tough mountain terrain like that. So, yeah, I'm so proud of them that they were able to come back and he's doing great. So I'm so excited for them. I think that's so cool. And then another thing I wanted to talk about, which is there's some irony here. I've been working on my horses' water troughs, trying to figure out, having 3 horses with the heat, how to keep their water clean, with alternating the troughs, getting them clean of the algae, because I've got 3 goldfish I transfer back and forth. So in the last month or 2, I've added an RV water filter to the spigot. So when I fill up the water into the troughs, it's already filtered. Then I added an aquarium filter. It's for a 180-gallon tank, and my biggest tank is 150. So they've got the filter at the spigot. They've got the aquarium filter that's in the trough. And then I've also got aerators in each of the 2 troughs that I keep. And
you realize that they really want to drink out of the muddy, gross water puddle, right?
They do. They want it murky, and they prefer the water with the fish in it. So I recently bought one of those things that measures the parts per million of the particles and whatever in your water, right? It's a tester. So now the water my horses drink in the barn that has goldfish in it is cleaner than the water in our house.
I think it's funny that you're going through all this effort and they'd rather drink the really gross water. That's
And I'm looking at the test results going, okay, so the water that has these 3 8-inch fish swimming around in it is testing cleaner for heavy metals and stuff than the one in my house, than the water in my house.
You realize your fish are going to die because they have no algae to eat now, right?
Well, I know, right?
You made the water too clean. They have nothing to eat.
But they love the aeration. They swim through it and play. It's really kind of fun to watch.
Oh,
But
so you put a bubbler in it too?
Yeah, the aeration.
See your own little pond, your own little pond with a waterfall and
Exactly. So we just have to laugh at the irony. So then, of course, that forced me to go out and buy a new reverse osmosis water treatment thing for the house. So it's like the horses are always costing me money somehow.
This has become an expensive project, yes. Your $100 project just became thousands.
Exactly. Oh, well.
So
we should at least drink water as clean as the horses get, though, right?
Yes. I don't know in our new place what it's going to be like. I can't wait to test it. But all right, let's do the numbers for Tevis this year.
Okay, so Tevis this year we had 139 start, 56 finished for a 40.3% completion rate.
How does that compare to previous years? The 40%.
It's a little bit lower. I think there's been another year or two where it was close to that same percentage. Most years in the past, we used to get more entries than 139, but that was lower than normal. I think it was
the accidents
really hot.
Yeah,
really hot this year.
And then the accidents, I know, slowed some people down too. We'll talk about that later.
Definitely, yes. Yeah. And then Jeanette Mero won, coming in first on her 12-year-old Chestnut Arabian Ozark Kalina, which she calls Lena. They finished at 10:05 p.m. and it was their 4th Tevis completion together out of 4 attempts. Second place was Dr. Mero's daughter, Reyna Mero, riding a 10-year-old gray Arabian mare, Kandaka's Eclipse, Clippy, finishing at 10:19 p.m. This was the pair's 4th Tevis and 3rd completion together. And Clippy and Alina also won the prestigious Haggin Cup.
Can you explain what that is again for new listeners?
Yes, the Haggin Cup is the Tevis Western States Trails version of best condition, and it's based on different factors that they consider that are somewhat different from what traditional best condition would be. They also include horsemanship and other things in the factoring of calculating it out. So the vet committee they don't have the entire vote on who it's awarded to. Part of it also goes to the Western States Trails Cup Committee. And we have talked about that before on previous shows. So if somebody wanted to go back and search for that, they could listen and hear and more in depth of how the Haggin Cup is awarded.
And but they actually show their horses the next morning then after the race, and they do what we would call in the eventing world a trot up or a jog up, right?
Right. They do a full trot out and back with full circles in both directions in the stadium with everybody's there watching. It's kind of a big deal. And, it's an honor just to be able to get to be in the top 10. And I understand this year I watched it from home because they show it live now. The webcast shows like all sorts of stuff live you can watch throughout the whole event. But the Haggin Cup is also televised, so you can watch it online, and all of the horses looked really good.
Well, Karen, before we get to Kristen over at Distance Depot, today we're going to talk about horse containment systems. I wanted to ask you about your endurance tip, and today we're going to talk about the art of trot transitions.
Exactly. Efficient trot transitions are key to conserving your horse's energy and maintaining a good pace throughout an endurance ride. So you want to work on having smooth transitions. You need to practice this. It doesn't just happen. It's just like with anything with horses. It's going to take work and practice. You've got to practice your smooth transitions going between a walk and trot and between different trot speeds. This way you can avoid abrupt changes that can jar your horse, waste energy, throw you off balance, make your horse sore. So you want to work on engaging your horse's hindquarters to step up under themselves, carrying more weight on their hind end so they're not heavy on the forehand.
And is this something you practice on the trail, or do you practice at home, like in the ring?
I do both.
Okay.
I like to do both. I like a horse that can do arena work. I know a lot of endurance riders probably hate that. They don't like to go round and round in circles. Me, I do. I like to work in a ring, and I like to work over obstacles and poles and around and over all sorts of different objects to help work with the balance and the transitions. It's also very important to change your diagonals. You need to alternate your diagonals when trotting and your leads when you're cantering. Most horses have the side they prefer. And if you're not careful, you will end up with a horse that's really heavy on one, working off of one diagonal versus the other. My thing that I try to do is subconsciously is I'll count to 10 or count to 20 and switch. And back and forth, so that it becomes, one of those things that's a habit. So you're constantly, subconsciously reminding yourself to switch your diagonals back and forth, so that your horse does stay balanced. Because on a ride, like, say, Tevis, for example, if you're not paying attention and you're on the same diagonal the whole way, you're likely to create a horse that gets a little bit sore before the ride is over. So use the terrain to your advantage on your downhill slopes. Let your horse extend your trot slightly to cover ground more efficiently. On uphill sections, shorten the stride and focus on a steady rhythm. And again, practice at home. Incorporate your trot transitions into your regular training so you can build muscle memory, improve your horse's responsiveness, and just get the nice smooth transitions going in and out of your various gaits and speeds.
Do you do when you're training for a ride, do you do all longer sessions, or do you do sets where you'll do trot sets like a bodybuilder would or a sprinter would?
Gotcha. Yeah, I like to vary it up. So some rides might be shorter, but we incorporate more climbing or more technical. And others might be a little bit shorter, but we're doing a little more speed work or more sand. There's so much. See, that's the cool thing with endurance riding. There's so many different ways you can approach it to make it work for you and your horse. So I can go out one day and do a lot of climbing up the mountain and back. So I can practice on our walk, because walking is super important, especially when you're starting younger, newer horses. That's super important. But I also I can go to a different trail and work on some sand training, or I can work on some narrow switchbacks. And so I kind of like to switch it up, but it's always important to work on your transitions so that they're smooth and your horse is smooth. So yeah, you're not getting jarred around, and it's wonderful when you're out there on an actual ride and your horse does the nice smooth transitions. It's just so much fun.
And it makes it a lot less scary when you're on a single track on the side of a mountain.
Absolutely.
Very good. Well, there you go. Go out and practice your trot transitions today. And right now we're going to head over to Kristen at Distance Depot, and she's going to be talking to us today about the ways to contain your horse when you're at a ride.
And next we have Kristen from the Distance Depot, and we're going to talk about horse containment systems today. So welcome, Kristen.
Well, thank you. Good morning.
Well, so tell us, what do you have for containment systems for horses?
Well, we have a couple of pretty popular options. The first one I would say is the high tie trailer tie system, which is essentially a flexible arm, which provides the equivalent to about a 13-foot diameter round pen. So the arm bolts to the side of the trailer or a wall, but in our case, most times to the side of a trailer. And it's a flexible fiberglass rod, and you can attach your own lead to the end of it. These are made so that they can swing, vertical or horizontal. So depending on the setup of your windows and where the mounting, the structural members in your trailer that you would bolt it to, depending on where those are, it can go either way. These are really nice because the horse can drink, eat, roll, lie down, all while being tied. And without all the racket of, when you hitch him up to the side of your trailer and his lead shank in the hay bag or
right
on the side of the trailer, keeping you up all night if you're staying in the trailer. So it's really nice. There are some accessories that are sold with it, such as the bungee. It's an adjustable bungee with a bull snap on it, and you can just attach it to the end of the arm. But it allows you to set the height of where you want your horse's head to be so that, of course, he'll be safe and not get, his foot over it, hopefully, or something silly, all the things horses can do. But that's a pretty popular accessory. And then, of course, there's a clip. It's sort of similar to like a blocker tie ring, if your listeners are used to that. But it allows you to set your own lead rope, again, to the height and give him sort of a safety way to escape if you need to.
Right, and you also have collars.
We do. So, yes, we manufacture the beta biothane collars for them with the O-rings where you can attach it so that when the horse puts his head down, the collar swivels and actually gives him a little more freedom, I think, than when you attach it to the side of your
and that way you can have your rope a little bit shorter, which lessens the likelihood that they're going to put a hind foot over it when they're scratching their ear. Because, every horse I've had does it at least once, and they have to learn. So so training them to go in a collar along with a high tie, I think, is a much safer way to go for containment.
Absolutely. So we do have that. And then, of course, we have the carry-like corrals for those that, maybe your horse doesn't tie as well or gets super excited when the other horse leaves and you really want to have a safe way to contain him. The carry-like corral will mount to the side of your trailer. And when you do so, of course, it gives you more room. It has 8 panels, and they are UV stabilized, so they won't crack and chip. It looks like PVC pipe, but it's actually not. These are super simple to set up. They collapse. These 8 panels will collapse, and they can fit in the mid area, the bed of a truck, and even in your back seat. So they do collapse down. They get pretty tall. I think they go up to about, 5'3" in length and 52 inches in height. So it will make, if you just set it up in a round area, like a round pen, it would be about approximately a 12-foot round pen. But if you attach it, again, they give you the brackets to attach it to your trailer for stability. And then, of course, it gets a little larger if you have that whole length of your wall of your trailer. So that's pretty nice and easy to set up, super simple. And then the last one, second to last one, we have fence in a bag. So the fence in a bag is essentially a portable fencing. It comes with 12 step-in posts. It has half-inch poly tape that you string through the post, sort of like you're fencing at home. It has the handle, the SpeedRite AN20 fence charger, which just takes 2 D-bolt batteries, and it packs a wallop. That little charger really does give a good zap as long as you have a good ground. And then, of course, the carrying case, and it has that reel, so you can roll all the tape up pretty quickly, and it's easy to set up, so that's another nice option. And then the last one is the Castro Highline kit. So sometimes they don't want you tying to trees, but this is pretty user-friendly, and it has 2 tree saver straps, so you can wrap it around the tree, and it will tie up to 4 horses on the Highline kit. So sometimes that's an option if you're out camping and there's no place to put up a fence, or anyway, we do sell quite a few of those as well. So some pretty good options there.
And how would somebody get in touch with you?
They can give us a call toll free, 866-863-2349, or visit us at www.thedistancedepot.com.
And our first guest this morning is Jeanette Jay Mero. Jay finished the 2024 Tevis in first place in 15 hours and 50 minutes. Yay, riding Ozark Tailina SWA Lena. And she has been a guest on here before. She's a writer, and also she's currently the head of the AARC Veterinary Committee and also serves on the Tevis Board of Governors and their Veterinary Committee. So congratulations, Dr. J, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for the privilege of talking. It's great.
Yeah, so we want to hear about your ride, how it went, a little bit about how you prepared for it, and some of the challenges and the difficulties that you encountered. So I'll let you take it away.
If I had to summarize it, and many riders will identify with this, if I had to summarize one thing about the day, was that I can't even remember that something went wrong. It's usually 100-mile rides, or I always like to say a series of problem solving through the day, and especially Tevis is just, and then sometimes you get stopped by something that is a problem that is just insurmountable. You know, your horse is uncomfortable and lame or off or something to that effect. So it was just a shocking day because everything moved along quite nicely, like no real issues.
So that was the big surprise of the day, is that there wasn't any surprises.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah. And I had a feeling, so how did we prepare differently? I had we'd had a long run up of we'd had 2 weeks of over 100 degrees, which is unusual, in the length that it was, not how hot it was, but how many days in a row. And we all were watching carefully to see if, Tevis would still, and it looked like the temperature was changing and dropping. And then, as you guys are probably well aware, it turned out to still be quite a very hot day with a lot of humidity. But that is one thing I really worked on with training. If I would get done with a long work day in the heat and want to hide in the house, I couldn't. I had to go out and ride horses still in the heat. And so we did a lot of heat training, and we did some additional speed training, because while I had been quoted for many years now saying, I gave up on the idea of winning, I didn't want to have to press a horse that hard. I wanted to put in a little bit more speed and a little bit more stamina, if you will. We definitely know that as you get after Francisco's and you're still climbing, you're still having to ask the horses to do things. And actually that whole stretch leading up to Francisco's, I wanted as much horse then as I had in the morning. And so I use a lot of interval work, and I also live in the mountains. So it's never flat. It's all up or down. So lots of training focused on intensity and the ability to still do hills late in a ride, and heat training. And I would say that's what we did different. The other thing we did largely different was, it's been no secret also, these two mares have not been gifted with ideal feet. And in fact, my mare is the worst feet of the two. And so it's been a struggle for many, many years of many different things to try. And we've done it all. We've tried it all. And this year in February, I switched back over to the sneaker shoe, but we still had to make modifications because this mare does not like sole pressure of any kind. And my trusty friend and farrier who came back to doing the horses, I'd kind of lost him for a couple of years. He was hurt and moved away. And anyway, we problem solved. And, we started in February with the whole plan of let's keep playing with this to give ourselves enough time to get ready for Tevis. And the little bit of drama that I didn't share with anybody was we shod the horses 10 days before Tevis, and every time we're done, we jog, make sure everything's okay. We jogged my mare. She was dead lame. Dead lame.
No.
I looked at him, he looked at me, and I said, please don't make me just wait. I know this mare, this won't get better. And he's like, no, I know. So we pulled the shoe off, and besides thin soles, the mare has very thin walls and is very touchy about where those nails go. And so we worked at it together, and we looked and repositioned a few nails. And then what we did is we set, a set of nails and then jogged her, and then another set of nails and then jogged her. And we obviously got it right. But it was nail biting that day. And still, as you can imagine, it's no fun sitting up there waiting for that head nod to show up. So as the day went on and the mare just stayed solid, like there was nothing, I just was enjoying myself more and more and more, for sure. It seemed like we were good. But yeah, that was quite a bit of drama. I guess if that was our drama, I'll take it, because after that, everything was smooth sailing.
It's all together. Good.
Yeah.
So we know it was really hot this year. Can you give us some of your tips or your strategy for managing your horse in the heat, and how to keep her cool down and her recoveries throughout the ride?
Yeah, so I would say the things that I noticed that I think should become every rider's tools in their toolbox was, for example, the climb up squaw. Like we don't go roaring up that. It's a moderately paced. I always taught my kids, we call that like our little shuffle trot. You like trot up it, and you keep the heart rate nice and low. And then we would walk actually for a bit, let them get a breather, and then trot up it. And so, by the time we got up to squaw, to high camp, the mares are fine, couple sips of water and off we go again. I think that's a source where people can get horses overheated. And then I would say the big ones would be appropriately making sure, like, these mares are metabolic kind of freaks. We know that about them. And that is basically how we did so well that day, was we utilized their great recoveries, but we didn't override them either. So as you're coming into all your holds, be mindful of what you need to do. Do you have to get off and walk? Like we don't. We can trot all the way in. We strip, made great crew. And the big one then is water, like lots of water. And we will address this on the Tevis board. I think we're all now realizing that in this new era of, the heat, we're going to have more water, colder water. The water was really quite warm all day, and that was a struggle. So, in fact, at Deadwood, all of us are there, top 10 or 15 or whatever was there. And we were on the far side in the sun, and the water was just, baking. And so we had to there was some shade. We had to go over and sort of find a spot on the shade side. And then as soon as we did that, the mares were like, oh, that's better, and lots of water. Many people needed to strip even on those outside checks. And if that's what you have to do. So I think that's the big one, is I still see people
and by strip, we mean pulling tack. The rider doesn't take any clothes off.
Yeah, right. So strip the horse, pull your tack, and then as much water as you are entitled to at whatever stop you're at. And putting towels on their neck is not helpful. Scraping is not helpful. Just water. Every time we got somewhere, volunteers would say, can we? And I'm like, yes, please, everywhere. Everywhere. You still see vestiges of people only putting water, say, on the insides of the legs by the big veins, or not on the back end. When you were in the heat that we were in, that horse needs water all over, and free, as much water as you are allowed to use. Every time you pour the water, the heat goes in, transfers from the skin to that water. The water falls to the ground. You put more on, heat transfers to the water. I think you see where I'm going with that. So frequent amounts of water. And that is the real secret to getting. And so if you're having a horse that's struggling, that saddle is in the way, right? You need to get that saddle off. Some more heat can radiate off. We were fortunate. We did not, again, these mares are just really unusual. We did not have to pull tack other than the two big holds at Forest Hill and and Robinson. Our secret at Forest Hill is we always jog straight to the hose. We get right up to that hose, and then we strip, and then we are so grateful to the landowner to be able to use that hose. And then we get them appropriately cooled down, and then we start the long walk up a little bit more at the tubs at the top, and then we're good to go.
And so when did you realize you were in first place, and how did that change your strategy?
Story. Right. So the funny stories of the day, Reyna probably said this. We were staying right with the top, whatever, 10, 15, I think it was. And I do, and I have said this for years, the competition is really, when I first rode my first Tevis in 2007, when we moved out here, and Dave Nicholson, the Duck, he told me all the way back then, you can leave Forest Hill at 8:00 and still be in the top 10. Like and back then that was true. And it's just changed so much and not in a bad way, just that the horses are incredible athletes, the ability, the science behind the training, not in a bad way, but now it's quite fierce, often quite fierce. So we just could not shake this group for the longest time. We would outpulse people, and then they'd catch up with us on trail because I just didn't want to press along that hard, if you would. And so I think it was before last chance, after Robinson, before last chance. And I looked over at Reyna and said, well, it's probably just going to be a top 20 kind of day. And we laughed. And she said, Mom, come on, it's early in the ride. And I laughed, and off we went. And so we got into last chance, and the whole group, the whole top 10 was there. Many of them having to strip, having to use a lot of water. We kind of quietly pulsed and left. And then we did that first canyon and came into Devil's Thumb first, and then Deadwood, and the entire group is there again. And that's where we were like, oh, okay, we're still right here. We're all right here. Everybody's right here. And we did not know it. So that was what's funny. We did not know that we actually left Deadwood in first. I thought that the Blakely mother, Gabriella, was still in front, and potentially a couple more. As we left Deadwood and went into the second canyon, we were actually back and forth, Reyna and I, trying to figure out who was where. And so we played the game. We were looking at hoof prints. It's fun to try to figure out how many are in front of you. And we got to the bottom of the second canyon with a very nice volunteer and his young volunteer. And we were watering the horses, and I just sort of politely said, hey, how many are in front of us? And he looked at me. He literally looked at me like I was the dumbest woman on the planet. It was quite funny because I think I was confusing him, and of course I was confused. And he was like, "What are you talking about? There's nobody in front of you." And I literally looked back at Reyna and said, "Okay, game on. Let's go." And that was it. It was that moment.
And so, what was the most memorable or rewarding moment for you on this year's ride?
I'm going to get a little teary-eyed here. I got off when I came across the finish line, and I got off, and all I could do was just hug my mare because that mare has over 3,000 miles. She's won a lot of stuff. And I think last summer I thought, well, we're over the hill now. The peak of her performance is already hit. We're on the downward slide. And there you are. She
showed you.
The most. She sure did.
She said, take this.
She did. She just is she's a remarkable animal. And I'm so grateful for her in my life and in our family's life.
Well, congratulations.
Well done.
And Dr. J is also on the AARC Veterinary Committee. And next up, we're going to be discussing the horse accidents that occurred at Tevis this year. So, Jay, let's just start out, and I'll let you explain what happened.
We have had some unfortunate events in the last handful of years, and as a member of the Tevis board, we took these issues very seriously to heart and made a lot of changes. And so we have this year, the last 2 years, 23 and 24, we then now have rescue teams in place, 2 to 3 sets of rescue, actually 3 or 4 sets of rescue teams in place with ropes training, with search and rescue, with veterinarians embedded. And then Davis, University of California, Davis Vet School, provides us with additional support with helicopter rescue as well. And so we were certainly primed and prepared and ready as needed to try to help horses if they had come off the trail. And what is to our just terrible sadness is that both the horses that went over the edges found themselves in positions where we couldn't use any of those terrific resources that we were ready to use. The last horse wound up getting itself in just a really bad position and had hurt itself, and it just was not. It was in its best interest to take care of it down in the canyon, if you will. That horse reportedly had some tack issues that sort of precipitated a crisis, and that I would say both the cases where the animals went off the trail. The other thing that we did besides provide new rescue stations was there was a lot of trail work that's been done, and so in both cases, these were just true freakish accidents with horses that sort of made bad decisions on their own, and over they went, and there you go.
Dr. J, so to clarify, neither one of them were heat related, right? This wasn't a heat issue. This was just an accident issue, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And the one, did I read that the one wasn't even riding? They were walking their horse at that point?
So let's see. I think both the riders were
dismounted.
Certainly the first horse the rider was off. Correct. Right. Walking up that
and leading
canyon.
And then the horse spooked and, reared and went over. I mean, which happens all the time. The part that I get frustrated with the people who say, we shouldn't do Tevis anymore because of this. Yet on this show, we've been doing this show for 3,500 episodes over almost 15 years. If we did every horse rescue story from a trail horse that went over, it's all we would do. Because it happens all the time. People just they don't hear about it all the time.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yep.
That's right. Well, I think people forget, and being a veterinarian now, horse vet for 30 years, people forget these are actually fairly fragile animals that those of us that have our lives with horses understand that they're prone to, they are flight animals, and they are, many of them, prone to snap decisions, sometimes not in their best interest. And as you're totally right. I mean, and I did read a lot of yes, I agree with you. I think here's where I think the Tevis board is, and we all are and need to be, that we shouldn't assume we get to use horses with impunity. Like, we all need to be aware that it's a social license that we need to hold near and dear. We all should do everything we can to be good partners and good custodians. And I said, I do feel that on the Tevis board, we adapted fantastically to be able to provide that. In fact, let me give you an example. There was another horse that got itself into trouble on the trail that was a heat related issue. And that horse was successfully treated on the trail, recovered on the trail, and brought up and is fine. And so there's an example of what we did really well. And because we had adapted in the last 4 or 5 years to be able to provide rapid support, that horse had a good outcome. And so I'm not saying I want to dismiss what these other people are saying. We can't afford to, or they will take
anymore.
Away our right to use horses. That's right.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So I respect their concerns, but I hope they appreciate that many of them, you cannot force a horse to do the 100-mile trail. It will not. It just will not. So many of them saying it's cruel just by nature of what we do. They really do. I think they do love it. I think they joyfully, if you ask properly and have properly prepped them, it's a joy to do it. And all these other animals, these horses that jump the fences, I mean, they're ears up, going right at it. They want to do it. And so I think we just need to continue to share with the general public the joy of a horse. I also think as a human, we have a duty. The horses are here to stay, right? We can't just turn them loose onto they've evolved with us through millennia, and it is our duty to provide for them. I don't subscribe to this just let them all return to being wild animals. That's not going to happen. They have evolved and adapted to rely on us, and it's our duty to provide for them as well.
We have 50,000 Mustangs and holding pens that prove that isn't the answer, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
We have. So was there any... Okay, so to try and address that, was there anything that could have been done here that would have prevented these two deaths, or was this just horses being horses? Which, by the way, on this show, we say the favorite thing for a horse to do is try and kill itself in any way, shape, or form. Yeah.
And again, as an equine veterinarian, I say that absolutely. I am sure if you picked it apart in its minutia, were there decisions that could have been made differently on the owner? Possibly. I can't, I'm not going to lie and say,
that isn't necessarily what I meant, because that's also one of those things that you think about it later. They're beating themselves up. We don't have to help with that.
Yes,
but,
they are.
As far as Tevis is concerned, there was nothing here. The trail at that part wasn't collapsing, or, there wasn't anything Tevis could have done with these two. Okay.
No, and I will tell you that we in the first few days, myself, the head treatment veterinarian, Dr. Langdon Fielding, the head veterinarian, Dr. Mike Perales. I mean, the three of us did have a debriefing with, could we, we had these great resources. Could we have still airlifted these? Was there any way to get these animals off and out? And the answer came back just as this bizarre, freakish no. Both of them had put themselves in positions where we just could not get them out. Well, the last horse in the night had dropped itself basically down into a crevasse in a pond area. And it's just like with walls and water, there was just no way to get to that animal, even to get it rigged, to get it out.
Well, and I want to give our best to these people lost their horses. So, they feel much worse than we do. And I want to give our best to them and our sympathies for their loss. Is there ever a time when Tevis or these other rides cancel because of heat? You said it, it's getting hotter. Is there a point, has there been discussion about, okay, what's too hot?
So far, we have not canceled Tevis to the heat. And as you're aware, we canceled it due to smoke.
Right.
I think that was
well, that year, nobody was going to breathe if you didn't. So, I mean, it was...
Right. It's interesting that you say that, because that's my duty as the head of the vet committee for Tevis is to bring these conversations up. And we're having an executive meeting tonight, and in our debriefings over the next few months, we will, I've already said, we have to adapt further. We must find ways to provide more water for cooling, colder water for cooling. So I don't think we're there yet, but if this world keeps going the way it's going, it is possible. It's possible. But I think before we get there, we're going to continue. And for example, good question, because Australia, I'm going to go ride Quilty again this year. It'll be my second time.
Oh, that's the big ride in Australia. Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
they are pathologically afraid of riding in the heat. They think we're nuts. And so they don't
The Australians
ever
think
have
we're
their-
nuts? Okay, that's a switch.
No, they do. It's really quite funny.
Uh-huh.
So they will start their ride at midnight. It's like the strangest thing to me. They are literally starting their championship 100 ride at midnight. And so that discussion came up already amongst our board. Hey, should we do that? Should we start that? And then when you pull it all apart, though, the problem is now you're in some really dangerous high country in the dark. That's probably not a good idea. And really, the majority of your riders take all 24 hours to finish the ride anyway. So that doesn't really help us either. So I don't know the answer to that. I do know that if we do get to a point where it becomes just so untenable, a heat index that is just, we cannot cool. If we cannot provide cooling, if we lose more shade and heat, I could see that it might happen. And then if we move the date, as we all know, we run into problems there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, and that was a lot of people that don't understand were questioning the date. Move it back, move it up. But the problem is you got there is snow. I mean, right? So
snow,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And people don't think about that. People don't think about that because it's summer, right? You don't have snow, but at that high an elevation, you've got a couple of months
Correct.
to deal with, and that's it.
Yep, that's it. That's all you get. That's right. Yep.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I think we've addressed every problem that endurance has ever had. We're good now. Congratulations again, Dr. J. Well done.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Recharge your training program with Equestrian Plus. Equestrian Plus brings together top riders, trainers, and professionals onto one video platform. Watch over 5,000 how-to training videos, clinic and event footage, exclusive training sessions, and more featuring top experts including 5-time dressage Olympian Stefan Peters, 5-time Olympic show jumper Ann Krasinski, Olympic eventer and silver medalist William Fox Pitt, and more. Join Equestrian Plus now and use promo code HRN15 for 15% off your first month. Visit EquestrianPlusPLUS.com to subscribe.
And next up, our guest is Reyna Mero. She is the 2024 Tevis Cup Haggin Cup winner, finishing second place, riding Kandaka's Eclipse SWA in 17 hours and 9 minutes, just 14 minutes behind her mom, Jeanette Mero, who's a veterinarian, and finished first riding Ozark Kalina SWA in 16 hours and 15 minutes. And welcome to the show this morning, Reyna, and congratulations to you and Clippy and also to your mom and Lena. We're so excited to have you on and talk to you about Tevis this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here and talk about our day and how much fun it was.
I'm glad you're saying that. So tell us about your horse.
Yeah, so Clippy, we got her a couple years ago. When we got her, we kind of bought her off of a picture. We got her half-sister first, which is Lena, who won this year with my mom. And since we knew those trainers and we knew the breeder, we saw her off of a picture and we were like, okay, we have to have her. So she is more of a pocket pony type of horse. I love her to death. She's the type of horse that she will give it her all if you ask her. We've done several hundred together. I think our first 100 was 20 mule team, and those are my favorites.
Is she Arabian and is she gray?
She is a gray. Yes, she's a race-bred Arabian. So she's half sisters with Ozark Kaolina SWA. They share a dam, and then they also have, they're related on one side with half brothers, I believe. I have to look at. It confuses me a little bit, but they're pretty closely related.
Yeah, I found it interesting. She was the only gray horse in the top 10.
Yeah, which, I mean, some years we have more. Some years I think we don't have any at all, but I'm sure, I don't know how, I know some people were talking about how because she's gray, it might help her with cooling that much, but I don't know. It was a humid day, so.
And hot, very, very hot.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to the actual Tevis Cup ride and tell us what was your strategy, your race strategy for this particular ride, and how did riding with your mother kind of affect things or influence you?
Yeah. So, I mean, my mom and I usually ride almost every ride together, and especially the hundreds. And so our strategy is usually we usually have a plan of, okay, we did X amount of training. We've been working them up. We're going to try to do our plan going into Tevis was, okay, we're going to try. We'd like to aim for top 10. But at the end of the day, we want a completion. And so we always go into it, as I'm sure you've heard my mom say, is riding the horse that you have under you that day. So even though we've been prepping them really hard and riding and training and going to 50s and getting them all ready for Tevis, they could be having a bad hair day and not perform as well on the trail. And so if that occurs, that means we need to slow down. So we pretty much, our strategy was we were going to go out faster than we usually go, and just try to do negative splits all day and have a steady race all day, and just try to hit the canyons when it wasn't super, super hot. But I think all day it was pretty hot and humid. So that plan didn't work out too much for us. But race strategy wise, where we really focus a lot in is during the holds, because we have the two mares that we have are really good pulsers. And so we try to spend the least amount of time as possible in all of the holds. And I think that occurred this year. It really, the holds definitely helped us. We came into Robinson, we got them pulsed down pretty quickly. And then it was after Robinson where all the other horses, it seemed they were struggling more. And we came into Last Chance, and we thought that everybody was way ahead of us in the top 10. And we came into Last Chance and the entire ride was right there. So we pulsed in super quickly, vetted, let the horses grab a couple bites to eat, and on we went. And then once we hit Deadwood, that's where we ended up being in the lead. And it was kind of funny. So my mom and our plan is, okay, we want to stay together, but if one of the horses needs a break or one of them isn't doing the best, then that person's gonna kind of sit back and take care of their horse. So the mares are very similar. They pulse almost exactly the same. Lena has definitely more mileage and just more experience under her belt than Clippy does. So usually we go into it thinking that, okay, Clippy's our weak link and Clippy's the one that we need to pay attention. We both pay attention to him, but Clippy's the one that we might need to cater a little bit more to crewing wise. And so after we found out we were in the lead, my mom says that she thought that there was still 5-6 people in front of us. I knew that there was either one person or it was us. So it was kind of funny because we were going down the trail and I was like, Mom, look at the tracks. There's nothing here. I'm telling you, it's either us or one of the Blakeleys in front of us, and that's it. And it's kind of hard to tell when you're going through the canyons or going through those tracks. It's really hard to tell who's in front of you and who's not, because you're kind of bouncing back and forth a lot and you can't see. And so it's just, okay, let's just keep with our pace, just keep what we're doing and focus on us and don't focus on anybody else. And my mom didn't believe me. She kept being like, no, we're not in first. she just totally wouldn't believe me. And I was like, Mom, I'm telling you, maybe one person, but I think we're up there. And it wasn't until we hit a bottom of a canyon and a volunteer person told her, you're in first, that she finally started realizing, oh, okay, we really are. And so I would say after that point, that would have been right before Michigan Bluff. Our strategy kind of changed a little bit. That was the second canyon we started going through. We decided, okay, we're going to since we're already in the lead, we are going to try to push the horses and see essentially how much time they need in the holds. And we're not going to give them any extra time in the little checks that they need. So Clippy's used to being able to eat a lot more during a ride. And so we kind of ran the risk of, well, let's see what they can do. So because every second, every minute really counts when you're going through those checks. So we got into Michigan Bluff and we really we watched their heart rates, and until they dropped until about 80 to 75, as long as they were dropping and they got something to drink, then we left and we got out of there. But that was pretty much our strategy throughout the ride until we hit Francisco's, which I'm sure everybody wants to know what happened, why my mom went in without me. So we hit Forest Hills. The girls were doing great. I think my mare needed that hour to tank up and eat, and they never picked their heads up from the mash buckets. And my mom and I, again, rode out together. They were doing fine. And, the pull out of Forest Hill, it's tough. It's pretty steep. There's a lot of mileage and a lot of hills and just a lot more on the horses when they're already tired. And so Francisco's is always kind of a harder one, and that's usually when my mare hits a wall. And so we hit Francisco's, and both of our horses needed a little bit more time to cool down. And my mare's pulse was 64. It was 64.60 as the CRI. And for most people, that might be pretty good for them. But for me, that's not my mare. She's usually much lower. And I just knew she needed time to eat. And so at that point, my mom was all vetted in. I was vetted in fine. And my mom's like, okay, we got to go. And I looked at her and I said, I'm not going to. I said, you go. I want you to win. I don't want you to wait for me. Just go. I'm going to wait here 5-10 minutes. I'm just going to let her tank up and eat and re-electrolyte because I think she needs it. And then I'll meet you at the finish. And she was just like, are you sure? And I said, yeah, just go. And so
okay, I have to stop you right there. And Karen and I have to give you a round of applause right now.
Yay.
For looking after
Good
the
job.
horse first, because it would have been very easy for you not to do that.
I know, like we were so excited. We were talking about, how cool it would be if we could both ride in. Like everybody talks about like Lisa and Garrett Ford riding in, like holding hands across the finish line that one year, husband and wife. And I was like, how cool would it be to have a mother-daughter? But I know my mare, and I do think if I would have pushed her, I know I would have been able to get the finish with her. But I don't think she would have looked as good, and I don't think I would have given myself a Haggin the next day with that. So I think because I waited and I gave her time and I was able to re-electrolyte her, and like she was acting completely normal. She just needed food. She needed fuel. She didn't have enough because we were really pushing it throughout the day. And so she just was, I mean, the volunteers at Francisco's were spectacular, and they had her head in the mash bucket the entire time, and I refueled on water, and then as soon as I saw another horse came in, I said, okay, that's my cue, and we're going. So I really only stayed, I think I ended up staying for about 10 minutes by the time I fixed all of my tack and let her eat and stick her head in a mash bucket. But it was enough that it really gave her the fuel, and then she was kind of fighting me the entire way back home. So that's how I knew I made the correct decision, because that was, and then once I got into quarry, her heart rate was back to normal of what it usually is. So I was very happy with the decision. And even though I didn't get to cross the finish line with my mom, I'm still so proud of her and proud of what we did, because we rode together all day.
Well, what kind of training do you do to stay in shape to get ready for these long rides?
So I work out a lot. I run. I actually, the last 2 years, I've been getting into running more. I do have to say, I don't know if my working out and running really helps a lot. I think a lot of riding is muscle memory. And I think at the end of the day, you're not like, I know a lot of people, like my brother, for example, he doesn't ride a lot when he was in college and everything. And he would work out and then he'd go ride like a 50 or 100 with us. And he would be really sorry the next day, even if he was working out really hard. So I think the main thing that really helps is just muscle memory and putting those miles in and riding. Like there's times where, because I'm going through school and everything and I can't ride for a while, even though I'm running multiple miles a week and I'm lifting weights and I'm doing all of that, if I'm not used to riding or been in condition for riding, I think it definitely does affect me. I think for the canyons and Tevis, running helped a lot, especially because I've been running outside in the heat. It just got me more heat acclimated. But I think for anyone trying to attempt Tevis, or I see that question a lot in like our endurance pages about how do you get prepared and how do you condition yourself? It's just more riding, honestly. Like just get in the saddle and ride and trot a lot and get your body used to it.
So what are the most important lessons that you've learned from this year's experience riding Tevis?
Oh gosh. Probably a lot. Lessons wise, I don't know if I necessarily learned a lot. I think it was more of implementing the lessons that I've learned through other rides and learned through my experience in endurance, because I like everything that I've learned in the past and accidents that happened on trail and things like that have all influenced this ride and how good of a ride we had. So in the sense of paying attention to my horse and okay, she's like, I'm like more of an anxious person when we're on the trail, and I pay attention to the horses very, very well. And I kind of analyze how they're drinking at each water trough. And, if she spent a little bit longer huffing and puffing before she took a drink here, or what's the heart rate here. So I think the main lessons are just pay attention to your horse. if your horse, like, even if the heart rate monitors, like, I know a lot of people like to ride off the heart rate monitors. I use them as a tool, but at the end of the day, I ride my horse off of how they feel. And it's,
Good.
the heart is slow, but they're not feeling themselves, and they don't really want to go that much, and they're not giving you the same energy that they usually do. That should tell you something. And so I think that probably the biggest lesson is just, I was able to finally, like, because my mom has always taught me that. I've never been in a real scenario. I mean, I've had my past gelding. He wasn't as good as a metabolic freak, as we like to say, as these girls. So I had to go a lot slower with him. But I've never been in that scenario where my horse really tanked and I had to like stop and do anything, because I think we pay attention along the way and we look for early signs of struggling or something like that.
Good. So the next morning afternoon, when they called your name for being awarded the Haggin Cup, what type of emotions and thoughts went through you? How did you feel?
Well, my mare Clippy, she's funny. She usually doesn't show very good for me. But that morning when we did show, she kind of gave it her all. And she gave me probably the showing of a lifetime. And she looked more sound than when she looked the previous year when we top tendered, and we thought that she looked really, really good. So we were kind of, I'm lucky because my mom's a vet and she's really good with lameness. So she's able to watch all of everything that's going on and kind of compare. And so I personally didn't think that I was going to get it, just because I thought, what are the odds of a 1-2 mother-daughter duo kind of mom wins and then daughter gets Haggin Cup. I wasn't really expecting it, and I don't see a lot of second place, first place horses getting the Haggin Cup, just because you usually ride them really, really hard, and sometimes they're not looking the best the next day, which is to be expected. But at the same time, our mares, we were very strategic on how we handled them, and they looked really good when they finished, and they looked good the next day. So when my name was called, I hesitated for a second, because there was 2 Chindakas in the top 10. There was Molly's Chindakas Express, and then there was mine, Chindakas Express.
Oh, wow.
I kind of looked at my mom and I was like, did he just say Clippy? I was like, because everybody starts cheering and you can't hear it all the way. And so I was like, did we just get it? And it was kind of like a moment of disbelief, and my mom's like leaping for joy, like, get up there. Yes, you did. You got it. So it was just a really, really amazing moment. And I think it made it more special that I got to do it with my mom. And then it was kind of like a last push, because I'm going off to school and in Washington. And so I'm probably not going to be riding for a while, because everybody says that I'm going to be pretty consumed with that school. So it was a really nice, I don't want to say reward, but like all of our hard work throughout the years has kind of paid off, and we did it kind of at the end of the day. And anybody knows about these mares, we've had a lot of struggles with their feet, a lot of lameness issues, and just finding what shoeing works best for them. Mm-hmm. And it was just really, really nice to finally make them look their best, because we know how good of competitors they are. It's just their feet have been an issue, and everything kind of came on board this year, and then we had that outcome. So it was a really special moment.
It sounds like it. I'm so proud of you guys and so excited for you both.
That's really cool. And what I said earlier is true, because right now, especially, we really have to be looking out for the welfare of the horses. We're not going to be able to do this anymore. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with current events.
Yeah, exactly. So good job. Well done.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks again.
Well, have fun in vet school. That sounds like a joy.
Yes, I'm sure.
Well, Karen, if somebody's interested in checking out the rides that are going on around the country, where do they go?
Go to AARC.org and look up the ride calendar.
And where can they follow things that you do?
I'm on Facebook as NV Endurance Rider.
NV Endurance Rider. And of course, you can find all the past episodes. There's a new way to do that now here. You can find all the past episodes of the Endurance Show by going to Horses in the Morning Facebook page or our website at horseradionetwork.com. the Endurance Show now has its own RSS feed. And what that means is you can go to your podcast player and you can search up the Endurance Riding Podcast, and you can get only these episodes. So if you want to just go back and binge on the Endurance Show every month instead of all the Horses in the Morning that we do every month, you can go to the Endurance Riding Podcast in your podcast player, and you can just get all the Karen you want right there. We tried to make it that easy. That's probably the easiest way if you want to go back and binge on the previous endurance riding episodes. And we'll be back again tomorrow with a brand new episode. And also, later on this week, we're going to have the Equine Affair episode, and we'll be doing some really bad ads on Friday. Karen, thanks for putting this all together today. Appreciate it.